long? You've been living here since you're 13.
I was not good.
You know what?
I don't want to judge.
I really can't
Love, don't judge.
Looks like
I
it's
take
on.
back the
If you keep on speaking Hebrew, you won't become my
Okay, but I really sincerely want to take back what I said. That it's my comment.
It's because I don't like something. I feared not knowing what I was saying.
I totally feel it. No, she's trying to convince me that it's not a good seat for that reason.
You're Goldie, right? And you are?
Yeah.
Mira? And you are? Racheli? You've been here in this class?
Yeah, a couple
Thank you. What's your name? What? Ah, Tamara Khan. And you?
I'm Karen R.
Karen, okay. You've been here since the beginning of this class?
Yeah, I've been on the air. Can we turn on the air? Yeah. I don't know.
Like a blow breeze.
Hot prep.
Well, what's going on?
I tried.
What, it's too warm for you in here?
So guys,
Let's try it without it and then. Ah, okay.
I know it's not much fun.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. All right. Who would like to tell me what we were talking about last time?
Sourcing your past experiences and remembering.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, that was very important. And because we were last time we were setting off onto the actual telling of the story, correct? That was yeah, so beautiful, beautiful. And we didn't actually begin Avadim Hayinu, the Pharaoh of Mitzrayim and all that, did we? Am I correct about that? That we were slaves to Pharaoh and that they're yeah, get the Haggadah, right, exactly. Thank you, Mercedes.
You're up? Yes, it's okay.
Oh.
Beautiful.
No, this steel body adjust this. Adjust you don't have to don't touch properly. What? Nothing there. Really? Yeah, around, yeah. Around? Somewhere, yeah. No, it's not so place.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. So yeah, last time what we learned about was in a way a halachic depth, class where we wanted to understand what it is that is supposed to be happening as we tell the story of leaving Egypt. And we discovered that it has a very interesting and somewhat surprising definition of what the mitzvah is, right? If you remember last time we pointed out that the Torah talks about telling the story to your children and them coming to ask you, and and things that we would expect then would be quoted as being what it is that the mitzvah is, right? We could have said that the mitzvah is to tell the story. Instead, what we discovered, at least in the Rambam, is that the mitzvah is actually to remember. And that was a bit surprising because it didn't really seem like that's what we were doing, especially the way the Rambam describes it, which was the way you remember Shabbat, so you also remember this. And Shabbat certainly wasn't about remembering something that had passed, but actually it was about being very attentive to what's happening right now. And it's correct, right? I mean, remember this? Zachor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho means remember Shabbat and sanctify it. So that clearly is not meaning remember Shabbat and sanctify it to remember something that was in the past. It's to take note of something in the present. That's a different verse. We're talking here about Zachor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho, from which the rabbis learned to make kiddush, right? Which is standing there and saying that right now this is a holy day, right? Something like, okay, so what we saw was that there's a very, very special kind of paying attention to what is, right? And that paying attention to what is on the one hand, it's very current, meaning it's about something happening right now. And it's something in which the past is enriched and actually fertilized by the past, built by the past, and given a context by the past. So if you think about it, right, you can just be relating to the present just as the present, or you could be relating to the present as the fruition of everything that has come up in our lives until now. Both of them are about being present, what is, right? But one is just kind of a disconnected present, and the other is a present which is, spans across your whole life, perhaps generations before you, perhaps all the way back to the beginning of the Jewish people, perhaps all the way back to the beginning of humanity. Wait a minute, am I about being present here now, or am I about the past? You're about being present here now in a present which is impregnated by the past, which is a fruition of the past, which is a realization of the past. See, there you can be very present, but with a very deep richness that comes with it. So the Rambam says, after all, the verse says, Zachor et hayom hazeh asher yitzatem miMitzrayim. Remember the day, this day, when you left Egypt. And from there, the rabbis derive that you should see it as if you're leaving Egypt right now. That's not remembering. That's, as we pointed out, remembering, taking what was past and making the present far more powerful because of that past. So I'm like leaving Egypt right now. My whole context is leaving Egypt, but it's happening right now, not something historical, but rather where the history defines the meaning of what's happening now. Okay. So this is a really important thing for us to know as we get deeper and deeper into the Haggadah, that's kind of the journey that we're on. How do I bring everything that I've been through? How do I bring all of the various stages along the way? How do I bring all the different generations that have been along the way into what's happening for me right now, right? In a way in which I'm living that out, fulfilling something, not trapped by it, not enslaved by it, but neither am I walking away from it. Utilizing it and at times transforming it. So if I was beaten up as a kid, so I can kind of try and walk out on that, or I can welcome that as being formative to elements of who I've become by virtue of that, which I'm able to take to a much more positive and maybe like sensitive place or empathic place or devoted place to others who are downtrodden, etc. But like I'm utilizing those elements of my history in a way in which they're freed up. They're like liberated from being enslaving, and they become those things which empower me. That's the kind of zechira, which is a liberating zechira, which is a freedom zechira. Another aspect of it, right? I'm just kind of reviewing a bit from last time. Another aspect of it is that it does give me direction. When you look at your past, you can get direction towards the future, meaning that like these things happened to me. Let me see how they might have been lessons that have been preparing me for different things along the way that were elemental for me to become who I am, and to also give me an orientation to what my future ought to be, what I should be devoting myself to, what I should be dedicated to, right? So that those are examples, and therefore telling our story is important not just as a reminder, but it's also telling our story to give us a context in the present for what it is that all that past has been leading us towards. And we're going to see a very amazing thing that happens later on in the Haggadah, that the central pillar of the Haggadah becomes how Yisrael comes with the first fruits that have blossomed in his garden. And he brings them to the Mikdash, he brings them to the temple. And then when he brings those fruits, he tells the story from the very beginning of Lavan tried to undo my father Yaakov, and then he went to Egypt, and we were in Egypt for a long time, and this happened to us there, and then we were brought out of Egypt, and Hashem saved us, etc. Hey man, I'm just bringing first fruits, like what's the deal? Like, why do you have to tell me all that stuff, right? It's just, you want to bring a sacrifice. Usually when you bring the lamb for a sacrifice or a goat or whatever, you bring it and you're done, right? This is like history, because it's such a beautiful image of history. When you're bringing that first blossoming from your garden, you're bringing a culmination of so many things that have led up to that moment, right? And so just like so many things led up to this moment of my being able to bring these first fruits, so many things have led up to this moment of me being here now. And just like those first fruits, there was a seed, and there were roots, and there was a tree, and there were branches, and there were leaves, and then there was this fruit that came of it. So too, I have come of so much that has been invested in me, through which I've grown to be able to reach this moment. I'm not leaving it behind. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not saying, hey, wow, how incredible it is what I did to bring this fruit. Nor am I just saying, here, Hashem, take this fruit. I'm saying I'm coming to you in all my fullness, just as I am a fruit which has grown over millennia to this moment. So also this, this fruit is an expression of that, a representation of that. So we're going to see later as we go through the Haggadah that becomes really central to how we tell the story. But before we get there, here we are at the beginning, right, of telling the story. So we're going to start now in the Haggadah after the 4 questions, or after, as I told you last time, really the one question, which is, how is this different? What's different? What difference does it make? Remember, we explored that. Now we're actually going to begin telling the story, and here is how it begins. I think we did a little bit of this, where we say we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And Hashem took us out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. That's it. We've kind of told the story in summary, right? That's like the title piece. And then we say, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if Hashem hadn't taken our ancestors out of Egypt, we would be there, and our children would be there, and our children's children would still be there, enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt, right? I'm sorry? Yeah. And even if we were all wise and all understanding and all aged and sage, we all knew the entire Torah, we would still have a mitzvah to tell the story of leaving Egypt. And the more you tell, the more meshubach it is, the better, the more praiseworthy it is. The more you talk about this, the better. That's very interesting, right? I mean, we have this mitzvah here to gab, talk a lot, try and come up with as much as you can. And then we're going to tell a story about rabbis who obviously knew the story and they knew plenty of things, who spent the entire night leaning, hayu mesubim, and we'll talk about that. They were leaning in a place called Bnei Brak. And that's the next piece here, right, where there was Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon, who were leaning, right? Mesubim means they were like leaning on the side in a place called Bnei Brak, which literally means the children of lightning. And they were telling the story of leaving Egypt the entire night until their students came and they said to him, "Our teachers, the time for saying the morning Kriyat Shema has arrived." In other words, you have to stop. It's time to say Kriyat Shema, which is also obviously something we'll want to understand, like, why is that their way of signaling them that, the time for telling the story is over. But you see that they spend the whole night at this, right? And they spent it leaning, right? Mesubim is actually something which you're supposed to do at the Seder. According to most of the halachic opinions, it's when you eat, when you drink the 4 cups. But it sounds like they were doing it the entire time they were telling the story. And I think there's a reason for that, which we're going to get into. Right? Okay. So this is how the Haggadah opens. In other words, it doesn't really seem to tell the story like we're supposed to tell the story, right? It just lets you know that we were taken out of Egypt. And then it starts telling us stories about people telling a story rather than just telling us the story. Just tell us the story. No, we're going to tell you about people who tell the story. And then we're going to bring something which is a bit complicated, right? The next paragraph, which is Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who was one of the rabbis who was sitting there at that table with the other ones, right? He says, I am like 70 years old. I'm like 70 years old. And I never merited to know that you're supposed to talk about leaving Egypt at night during the year. Because I thought that it was only something that during the year you're supposed to do in the daytime. Now, he's not really talking about what you do at the Seder night. He's talking about what you do during the year, because every day you're actually supposed to think about the leaving of Egypt, right? But as we're going to see, it's in a very different way, right? And in any case, he said, like, kind of, it's almost sounds like kind of out of nowhere, like, I thought that maybe you only do it in the daytime and not at the nighttime. But I really wanted it to be. That would also be at nighttime. And then came along Ben Zoma and made a drash, meaning he investigated the verse, the following verse, which I'm about to read it, and learned from that you also have to do it at night. I mean, believe me, this is not feeling like it's just out of nowhere just to you. It's like you're there at the Seder night. This is what you're reading about. The conversation that they had, spent all night telling the story, and then maybe it sounds almost like we're zooming in on one of the people and what he was talking about. Like during the year, it seems that you only do it in the day, but we found out from Ben Zoma that you also do it at night. as the verse says, you have to remember the leaving Egypt all the days of your life. All the days, that's the daytime. The days of your life, that's the daytime. All the days of your life, that's including the nighttime. Okay? And then, but the Chachamim say, the other opinion is, no. All the days of your life, that's this world. The days of your life, that's this world. All the days of your life, that's the world to come. That's the time of the Mashiach. Okay, amazing. Except I thought we were here to tell the story of leaving Egypt. And instead, what's kind of going on is we're hearing about these very special people, how they spent the whole night talking about it while they were leaning, right? And then we zoom in on one of them who says, I really wanted to know that it also includes the nighttime. And I later found that out from Ben Zoma. But there's another opinion which says it's in this world and in the time of Mashiach. Okay, like this needs a little bit of investigation, first of all, to understand why this would be the way we begin telling the story, right? And two, what is this doing to us? What is this doing to us? So here's the suggestion. What's going on here is a fulfillment of something which at the very outset we need to know that we're headed for. And that is that it doesn't matter how much you know, you always have more to tell, to discover, to not only understand, but to participate in. Like, it's kind of like this in life. If you don't know that you're on a pathway that is forever unfolding, and you ever get the idea that like you know it all, you've heard it all, you've been there before, and therefore there's nothing more for you to discover, then you're basically done, right? I mean, you're kind of done. And so you then become, what happens to you, since that's actually a falsehood about yourself, because you're never finished exploring and unfolding. But if you close yourself down, then you are basically becoming enslaved to the image you created for yourself that is the one that is now. And that is the enslavement that the rabbis here are telling us, that like these who are among the most profound and learned of all the rabbis of history spent the entire night exploring while they were leaning to their side. So let's take a look at this leaning to their side thing, and then we'll get back to our bigger picture. What is that? Why do we need to point out that they were Misubim? And why do we need to know where they were? This place called Bnei Brak, right? Which is the city of lightning. The children of lightning live. I really like that. I think that it's even more impactful. It is.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, first of all, yes. Apparently, that was where it was. It was near Lud, Bnei Brak, Yafo. These were the cities that are near the coast over there. And indeed, because the Romans made it very, very difficult for the Jews to live in the Jerusalem area, so the rabbis would wander around a lot of the Galilee, in that area down there, of Bnei Brak and Lud, etc., in Yavne, which is also nearby there, right? Because the Romans, when the Romans came, they renamed Judea, they renamed Israel Palestine. That's how the name was actually originated. It was originated because the Philistines were our greatest enemies in the Bible, and the Romans wanted us to really hurt that we had been defeated. So it became illegal to call Judea Judea. You had to call it Palestine. It's not the claim that it's like a population that is indigenous to here is actually extremely silly, given that Palestine is actually a Latin word, which you cannot even say in Arabic. You can't say P, there's no P in Arabic. So Arabs call it Palestine or Palestine. Palestine is just to avoid having to say the P, which you don't have in Arabic. It's a Latin word which was used to indicate that like you've lost your country, right? And one of the ways that they would push us to feel like we completely lost our country was they made it very, very difficult for Jews to live in Jerusalem. And so you find the rabbis having their conversations just about everywhere but Jerusalem, right? That's what's going on here. This is that period in history after the temple has been destroyed and the Romans have occupied Israel, and so that's why it's going on in Bnei Brak. Okay, but there's a deeper meaning, as always, in that it's called Bnei Brak, and it has to do, in my opinion, with the fact that they were leaning there. And let me give you a little bit of background about this leaning thing, okay? Because it's one of the things which is actually mentioned in the 4 questions. Why do we lean tonight and we don't just sit up straight? It's something which you'll see when you're at the Seder, and those who've been at the Seder have seen that like people are leaning over on the left side. It used to be that there'd be like a bed and you'd like kind of lean over on your left side, right? So it can be quite comfortable if you have the right chair. It can be really uncomfortable if you don't. But so the standard reading for that is that that's the way that free people sit. You know, if like you're enslaved and you're a slave and you're having to show like respect to the other people, you know, to your master at the table, then you're going to sit up straight, young man, sit up straight, young lady, right? That's like you sit up straight. But if you're like free, so you can like kind of lounge, right? So that's definitely part of it. I personally don't like this chair. I'm hard seat and straight back. I just noticed that as I was trying to move. This is much better. Okay, let's get that energy going. Okay. So yeah, that's okay. That's definitely a respectable interpretation, that they're leaning because they're, you know, like sitting like free people sit. But here's this amazing thing, and that is that actually the Midrash says, if you take a look at the beginning of chapter 13 of Shmot, of Exodus, right? Those of you who have a Tanakh in front of you, you can look at it, but I'm not going to read a whole lot, so you could just listen to it. That's where we actually get the story of leaving Mitzrayim, okay? Like at the end of chapter 12, and chapter 13, beginning of chapter 13, we're told about the Jewish people leaving Egypt, and you really should read these chapters. It's really important. 12, 13, 14. Okay, so they're on their way out. Now listen to what happens when they're on their way out. Okay? This is really important to understand. It says, "Vayihi b'shalach paro et ha'am v'lo nacham Elohim derech eretz plishtim ki karovu ki amar Elohim ben yinachem ha'am b'yotam milchama b'shav Mitzrayim." Okay? Some of you have this in front of you? Amazing. Wow, great. Okay. It says, when Paro sent the Jewish people out, when Pharaoh sent the people out, so God did not take them on the path that leads directly to the land of the Plishtim, right? Because it was too close. Hikarovu was too close. And God said to himself, right? God said to himself, boy, lest they regret this whole business of leaving Egypt when they see that they have to do battle, they have to make a war with the Plishtim in order to get into Israel, and they'll just say, well, let's just go back home. Okay, next verse. Vayasev Elohim et ha'am derech hamidbar yamsuf. So God made a roundabout route. Vayasev means roundabout. Okay, he made a roundabout route through the desert on the path of the desert through Yam Suf, the splitting of the sea. And the truth is, Chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, which the rabbis read as only 1/5 of all of the Israelites left Egypt. The rest of them just preferred to stay where they were. Okay, so yeah, that's
Disappointing.
first of all, that's disappointing, and no question that's disappointing. And that seems to be that, like, there were a lot of people that most of the people just preferred to stay put. And I think we can understand that, especially as we get deeper into what's going on in these verses and why that would be mentioned here. Because I want to point out that we're actually told that they left back in chapter 13, the end of 12, that they left, and etc. Right? It says that in chapter 12, verse 34, they took the chapter 12, verse 33, the Egyptians tried to push them out quickly, get out of here, and they did, and they etc. They brought stuff with them, and then in verse 37 it says, and they actually left. Okay, so we already heard that they left. So now what the Torah is coming back to say to us is they did leave, but Hashem saw that plan A is not going to work. Plan A is just take them right home to Israel. Plan A will not work because they're going to be afraid. Plan B is make a circuitous route, try to take them around the long route. And instead of, like, if we had a map here, just like kind of trace it, Egypt's over here, Israel's up here, right? Instead of just going up like that, instead he takes them this way through the Sea of Reeds, right? Yam Suf, which gets split. Then they go into Sinai. Some have it that they actually cross Sinai and that sea is over here. Whatever it is, they're not going that way, which is the way they ought to be going. They're going this way, okay? Because they need time. They need to circle around, okay? Now, a lot is going to happen by virtue of this circling around, like all the time in the desert, the splitting of the sea, actually receiving the Torah. I mean, there's a lot that's going to happen because God went with plan B and didn't go with plan A. In other words, because of their inability to face and be in the reality of having to just go direct in and fight their way in. So, wow, I mean, kind of the rest of the Chumash was written, they were like there in the desert, right? For all those years. So that's definitely important to realize. Now, first of all, you see here how interactive our reality is, right? Hashem might have one way that, would be sort of the ideal way to go. But the world that he's created is not one of ideals at all. It's a world in which people need to grow, develop, process, evolve. It's a world in which we are all living the circuitous route. We're all living the roundabout path. None of us is living the perfected reality. We're all living a reality of a long and winding road. That's basically what's going on. And that's literally what Vayasev means. We went on the long and winding road rather than just going on the straight path. And what happens when you go on that road? So there's so many things that open up. First of all, you discover that there's something called a derech. Look at verse 18. Vayasev Elohim, God took them on this circular thing. Derech, the rabbis say derech. That's a way to say Torah. Torah is a derech. He brought them into a reality which is walking on the path. Hamidbar. He took them into the desert. What's that? That's receiving the manna, where they learned that it doesn't matter where they are, Hashem will support them. And he took them through Yam Suf, which is the sea which was split. So now, not only does he do that, right? Not only does he do that, but he makes it so circuitous that if you skip down a couple of lines to chapter 14, it says that Hashem spoke to Moshe and said, "Speak to the children of Israel. Let them go back and encamp on a place called Pi Hachirot, which is between Migdol and between the sea, near Baal Zephon. Let them encamp there across from the ocean. V'amar Paro lifnei Yisrael," and then Pharaoh is going to say about the Israelites, "Oh, they've gotten lost. Sagar lehem amidbar." He's really closed them into the desert. And I, God says, I'm going to make Paro's heart courageous, and he's going to chase after them. And then I will get great honor in what happens to him. And everyone will know that I am Hashem. And indeed, he chases after them. And then they're up with their backs against the sea. And Hashem has to split the sea for them to go across it. Okay? Now, get this. This route is so circuitous, right? It's so roundabout and so winding that it actually winds back around to Egypt and creates a situation which wouldn't have happened were they not to have done that the Egyptians start chasing them. And then they go on the circuitous route, right? They're not going straight up to Israel. They're going this way, where they're going to circle around during the course of 40 years, right? And the first thing that happens is they are treated to this incredible event, which is when your back's up against the sea, just start walking and the sea will split, right? Oh my gosh. Like, now that wouldn't have happened had they gone the direct route. Nor would it have happened had they not turned around and gone back to leave again, with now the Egyptians saying, they're lost. We got them now, right? And I guess they were going to do them in, it doesn't seem that they were planning to bring them back because they didn't want them in Egypt. They had actually pushed them to leave. So this is really interesting. Like, why do we need to leave twice, right? And why is Hashem taking us on this crazy roundabout route? And here's the thing, that same word vayasev is the word mesubin, of leaning while you talk and eat. So actually, what's happening, right? Let's just get the facts straight and then we'll get it deep. What's happening is we are imitating with our bodies this idea of being on a circuitous route. We're on the winding road. We're not sitting up straight. We're on the winding road. That's the leaning going on, okay? Now here's the deal. If they were in a place called Bnei Shemesh, or Beit Shemesh, like, which means the place of the sun, that's very different than being in the place of the lightning. Because in the place of the sun is shining strong, everything's clear, and you know exactly where you're going. But if you're only having your way lit by lightning, so there's just flashes of insight, but most of the night is dark. If you're in Beit Shemesh, so it's clear going, baby, go on the straight path. But if you're in a place which is the place of lightning, then you're going to go the circuitous route, man. You don't really know the way by having some kind of overview of where we're headed. You're just walking, and whenever the light shines, I'll put my foot down, but I can't see the whole picture when I'm in Bnei Brak. I can only see the whole picture when I'm in Beit Shemesh, so to speak, right? I can't see the whole picture when I'm on a circuitous route because I don't really know where the road is going. What I do know is that I'm here on the road and that this is where I need to be right now, based on who I am, what I'm capable of, and what it is that this is supposed to teach me.
Amazing.
Yeah. This is like, well, this is actually literally what's going on here. So that these rabbis are sitting there and they do have a lot to say. You know why they have a lot to say? Because they're not talking about some event which occurred way back when in history. They're talking about things that are absolutely and completely about where they are now. And they're able to talk a lot about that. And this is really the way it is in life. They're able to talk a lot about that because indeed, where the path is going is not the subject right now. Right now, we are leaving. Okay. We're not yet going somewhere. We are leaving. Okay. That's really the first step, right? Meaning that I need to be on the move, right? Just keep moving. And, you know, it's so much that way that indeed, because I quoted this already, but indeed, that looks like we're wandering to the Egyptians, but we are not lost. We are wandering. We are moving around. Nivuchim heim bamidbar, right? To be navoch. To be navoch actually comes from the same word as bechi. Bechi means to cry. There's like a kind of a brokenness, you know? It's like there's a brokenness here. It's like I'm not seeing the whole picture. I don't really know where I am. Can you cry? Emek habacha is the valley of tears. Can you cry? Can you allow yourself to be broken? Are you willing to let go of the certainty about everything and just be searching? You see, this becomes here the very definition of leaving Egypt. Because the first time back in chapter 13, you know, at the or in 12, which I read to you before, where they left, they were leaving on the direct path. And I'll tell you how this works. Because God said that, he said to Abraham, right? He said to Avram, he was still called Abram then, right? Avram. And a passage we're going to look into a lot, chapter 14 of Genesis, of Bereshit, worth looking at also. He said to Avram that, you know, I'm going to send your children down to a land which is not their land, right? And then they're going to be in suffering there, and they're going to be enslaved. And then they're going to leave and they're going to come back here. Great. First time leaving Egypt is a promise was made to Abraham. That promise must be kept. Welcome aboard to the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham. Well, you like that, but I'm just about to, here comes the spoiler. No, we wanted, we are in that. We are in that. Don't worry, I won't take that away from you. But think about leaving Egypt as the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham. That's a good, I'm very happy to participate in this. I'm very happy that I'm here for you to move me as the pawn in history, which is being moved to fulfill the promise that you made. And I guess you've got a promise and you need me to fulfill it. Okay, I'm on board, I guess. You know, it's like, that's very different than, hey, my promise has been fulfilled. Now we're doing something else, baby. Taking the highway for an amazing trip together. Because I love you. And I want you to know that I love you. This time I'm not doing it because I have a promise to fulfill to Abraham. This time I'm doing it because I'm relating to you what your needs are, who you are, what you're able to handle, and the best thing of all, We're going to walk on a path together in which, the truth is, so to speak, Hashem says, I don't really know what's going to happen because it depends so much on you. If it were the direct path, then it would be about me. I would take you on the direct path and be finished with the thing like that. But it's not about me, it's about you. And you're not ready for that. You need to evolve. You need to grow. And therefore, and in a way, right, let's keep theology out of the picture, right? In a way, because it depends on you and the way you grow and how you grow and what you need. I don't know either what's going to be going on around here, We're in this on a path together. And that's why the first word that describes them leaving is that he takes them on this circuitous route, derech hamidbar. He's taking them on a path, okay? They're not going guided. They're going around. We're walking around. That's what people talk about, right? We're walking around. Okay. So this is, I'll relate to you in a couple moments, right? It's very important because this is an entirely different picture then of the nature of the divine relationship with us, right? There's a, promise, and Hashem is faithful to that promise. And it's very important to keep it. And we leave Egypt the first time for that. But then it's almost like Hashem wants to show us, okay, I'm done with that. Now I'm making this about you, the particular people who are leaving right now. Okay, you're no longer objects in some kind of historic saga. You are full participants in the making of this story. Okay. Ooh. What happens when you become the full participant in the making of the story? Well, that means how I see it is extremely important. I mean, how you see it. I mean, we're talking about how you see it. What I mean, how you see it. It's the way it is. Well, I suppose in classical physics, you might talk about the way it is. But for the last century, even physicists haven't been talking about the way it is, but rather the way it is has a lot to do with the way you see it. There's some joke about the umpires in the classical world. The umpire says at the baseball game, sorry if not everyone knows about baseball, you know about baseball, some of you aren't from the United States. There's this extremely boring game that Americans play where the guy stands there and he swings a bat, swings a bat and he hits, and then he runs, and then they all stand around, waiting for the next guy. It's like there's plenty of time for beer, popcorn, it's like very American kind of game. So the umpire stands behind the plate and he calls whether the ball went over the plate or not. So it used to be the umpire would say, I call it as it is. Then it became something else. And then the way I call it, that's how it is. That's quantum physics. The way I see it. Now, a lot has happened in the world around physics, and I'm not going to go off onto that. That's really intellectual type class. But suffice it to say that it's something that we certainly know on the level of personal. It's like something. I don't see you the way you are. I experience something that happens between us, right? I mean, it's not who you are and what you are. I can never see you are and what you are. I can only see that which is registering with me and the way I'm experiencing it and what I'm getting from it. And there's a relation to a truth which is out there. I'm not going into there's nothing out there. There's only my mind. No, I'm not going there, but I am saying that there's an interaction between them. Okay. There's a co-creation that's occurring that is rooted in the very beginning of creation, which perhaps sometime we'll explore together in a different series, where there's no rain and there's no growing and there's nothing until a human being comes and prays for it and appreciates it. We're elemental to the actual we're elemental to the actual a realization of creation. It's not like creation is here and then we arrive, look at it. We're elemental to participating in it in a way in which that interaction makes it happen. It sounds very profound, but it's no different than what's happening right here in the room. Don't think these words are pre-planned speech, I hope. It's something which is happening here because of the people here and what's coming to me. And what's coming to me has a lot to do with who's here and whose faces I see and a sense of, what's right for this place. That's really part of the craft of teaching, really, right? And love is certainly like that, and any good conversation goes there, and really ripe music is that way. And, there's always this kind of interactive co-creation that we're participating in. That's the second leaving from Egypt. The first leaving from Egypt, God's got a plan. We're going to make this happen. The second leaving from Egypt is, I don't think these people are really right for the plan that I had. Let's see what happens. and then he takes them on this circuitous route, right? Now, I'm being a little bit playful in that description of God, but the point is that's exactly what's going on here. That's what's being described. God sees that they're just not ripe for that plan A, so we're going to go a different path. And that path, which repeats itself many times in the Torah, this is almost like a pattern in the Chumash, where God's got a plan, it doesn't work. Take a look at the way the Torah is given and what happens 40 days later. Here they are dancing around the golden calf, doesn't work, break those, and let's try a different approach. Right? And that's what's going on. It happens all the time. In the Chumash, it happens all the time. And I know I'm being like a little bit funny about it, right? But the truth is it's a very, very deep shifting that's going on all the time. It's something I think that probably you've all experienced in your lives. I got a plan. This is what I'm doing. This is what it's about. I've got my career. I'm headed for it. And then, boom. What was that? What? No, it doesn't fit. It does fit. It doesn't fit. Am I going to look at that burning bush or am I not going to look at that burning bush? What the heck was that? Wait, just 1 second. Wait a minute. I'm feeling confused. I'm lost in the desert. I think that straight path is gone. I don't even know where it is anymore. I'm now on the long and winding road. And here's the good news. God is there right with you. He's not trying to push you back onto the straight path. He actually seems to like this way of walking with us. He actually seems to like this and chooses it. I mean, he could have, what he could have done, by the way? Do you think God didn't have like a way to just blast those Philistines out of there and the Jews would just kind of march right on in? I mean, did it have to be a war? It didn't have to be a war. God, he could have gotten rid of them, couldn't he? So that's what I mean, that like, no, he is with us in our evolving and our growth. It's so touching, you know what I mean? And this is actually something that Moshe later points out to God, by the way, using the exact same words of Nacham. And I'm talking about a chapter which I strongly recommend you look at, chapter 33 and 34 of Exodus, where Moshe's there up on the mountain and God says, oh man, there they are worshiping the golden calf. I'm out of this. I'm going to destroy them. And just me and you, babe, we're going to start a new people again. And Moses says, forget that. So then God says, okay, so I'll send an angel instead of me because I can't take this. And then Moshe says, yes, you can. If you don't walk with us, we're not going anywhere. And then God says, okay, I'm walking with you. It's the same thing. It's mamish the same scene again. We got to start again, in a whole different way. One is a way of the strictness of what is the pre-planned path and the fulfillment of a promise. And the other is the path of love, the path of compassion. It's the path of birthing together and evolving into something which never would have happened had we not just let this unfold. And so we have this beautiful, beautiful shift in the story. Let's get back to Bnei Brak, where the rabbis are leaning in order to replicate in their bodies this idea of being on the circuitous route on the winding path. You get it? It's like we could be here all night, man, talking about this, exploring, growing, evolving. It's not like there's a single story that needs to be told. After all, and this is how we introduce the story of the rabbis in Bnei Brak by saying, and even if you're completely wise, you know the story, you know the entire Torah, you're very aged and been at the Seder many years already, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you're actually participating now in creating that story of leaving Egypt. It didn't end when they left the geography called Mitzrayim. It didn't end then. And in fact, and we'll get to this later, I just want to point out an amazing thing. When God tells Abraham the first time there in chapter 14 of Bereshit, that they're going to go down to Egypt, he says, Yadoa Teda. They're going to be knowing and knowing again. They're going to become a people that knows and knows again. Yadoa Teda is a double verb saying to know. It says it twice. Know and know. What do you mean know and know? I mean, if I know, then I know. Oh, that's what you think. When you know, you don't know, you just know. But when you know that you're knowing, then you are knowing. Then you know that you are knowing. And that means that you're in an ongoing unfolding of coming to know. That's who your children are going to become, God tells Abraham back there in chapter 14 when he first tells them about going down to Egypt and being released from there, that they're going to become a people that is always on a quest together, right? And actually the way they leave Egypt will not be only a fulfillment of the promise. It is also, but it will also be an act of my inviting them to forever be unfolding. Okay, so now you can get a feel for what's happening here. Okay, you want to know the facts, baby? We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God took us out of there with a strong hand and outstretched arm. Okay, got first leaving of Egypt. We're done. Cool. Everyone knows facts, story. Okay. Now, let's begin the second leaving of Egypt, when we were told to go back and start again, because that's what we're always being told. Go back and start again. And there, it doesn't matter whether you are wise, smart, know everything, etc. That is something that the more deeply you experience, the more you talk about it. And by the way, talking about it is not, it's also talking about it, but it's enunciating, it's exploring, it's becoming more conscious, which is what talking does. And we're going to have to talk about talking itself and its own separate relating to it, and perhaps even today, but like, talk about this a lot. Right? The more you talk about it, the more multifaceted it is. Marbe, rav, harbe means a lot, not just a lot quantitatively, but pru or vu, be fruitful, and multiply means to multiply into many different vantage points and ways of seeing this and exploring it. You get this? That's we're going to be here. We're going to be here all night. This is something we do all night. And specifically at night. Why not in the daytime? Because at night, we can watch the lightning flash. We're in Bnei Brak, baby. We can watch that lightning. Wow. Ooh, what was that? Amazing. What lightning does is it focuses you on the moment you are in, but never lets you go think that that's all there is. And that's a really important awareness. You are right here now. That's great, but that's not all there is. There's a lot more yet awaiting you. So should I just forget about this? No. Be completely in it, knowing that it doesn't end here. Okay? This is like such an important orientation in life in general, you know. And I want to tell you something about love, right? That I know that sounds like, where did that come from? Yeah, I'll tell you shortly. But I want to tell you about the things that are most important to us in life, and love is probably the most important one. Love is a very scary thing. It's a very scary thing. Love is a very scary thing, right? Because love is both intense and attaching, right? It's you become attached, you're connected. Now listen to this, right? Anyone who's in love knows that that love itself bespeaks an absolutely unique and inimitable, like unrepeatable connection. When you have the love, right? This is like not replaceable by someone else, right? This is something which is elemental. Why don't you give her a hug and tell her she should go to bed? Tell her she should really. Okay. Anyhow, no. Okay. So I don't want to torture anyone. I feel like I'm torturing.
No.
Not.
No. She's works really hard. Yeah.
I see. Okay. So. Okay. It's just a thing in mind. So listen. So like, when you're experiencing that absolutely and completely unique connection with someone, which is most intensely experienced when there's a relationship of love, right? When I'm like totally with you as you are. And yes, the reason I'm talking about that here is because that's what Hashem is doing. In all of your partialness, right? And all of your inability to just let me just take you right in, you know, come on. No, I'm not there. Now, if Hashem loves you, then he will be with you along that evolution. If he's just got a plan, you know, well, you know, then deal, right? Then he will harshly force you into the particular frame which he has predefined, right? When you love someone, you don't force them into a frame predefined because you love them. To force them into a frame you predefined would be like rape. That wouldn't be love, right? Do you understand this? So now here's the deeper thing, that that part of what makes that so scary is the nature of uniqueness, which is that it always is ephemeral. It's always temporary. It's passing. What makes it unique is the fact that it's just right here now. You know, it's not going to repeat. It's never going to be here again. It's going to be gone in a moment. It's dead in another moment. Truth is, anyone you love, you could lose. The truth is that love itself is actually intensified by that awareness that this is so dear, so special, right? That's what you're so special. Well, specialness means that it's just here now, temporary. Wait a minute. You sure you want to get involved in that? Because he's going to die, she's going to die. It's just temporary. Sure you want to get involved in that? Huh? Do you have the courage to get involved in that? Are you scared? You ought to be. Okay. So, and here comes the good news. And that is that all moments are partial, but all moments, if they carry with them this deeper sense of zikaron, of memory, that like, it's true that it's partial, but it's part of something much bigger. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. And you know what? Her soul, excuse me for talking from the masculine, right? Her soul is vast, infinite. It's having a particular expression right here now. Take it. It's beautiful. It's meant for this right here now. But it doesn't end. It's endless. We live infinite souls that are brought into finite vessels. So can you hold both of those at once? Can you hold being on a path in which you are only experiencing like what's here now on this path, which is unfolding as we go through it, right? But is part of something very, very big that's being expressed here now. If you can hold those two, can you hold those two? If you hold those two, so then love becomes magnificent. It's not scary, it's magnificent. Oh my gosh, what an incredible opportunity. It's so unique and so unique and so perfect in that uniqueness. And that perfection will pass. That's okay, but that's actually because it's part of something bigger, which is continuing to unfold. You wouldn't want to trap it, would you? You wouldn't want to enslave it, would you? You wouldn't want to take the parakeet and put it in a cage now, would you? And some people do. But like, you get it? It's like, so this is the amazing depiction being given here. It's a night with lightning. It's a night with lightning. We're being strobed as we tell the story. Poop, 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 poop. Wow, amazing. Wow. I mean, is that it? Well, until the next flash of light. But it's perfectly unique and absolutely almost like a still right here, right? You get that? Then it's actually very wonderful to be by Yaset on this circuitous route, because we're not as much talking about getting to where we're getting to. We're actually talking about being on where we are, right? That's what these rabbis of Bnei Brak were embodying in this marvelous evening that they were having together. Okay, and then the students come and they say, rabbis, look outside, the sun has come up. We're now moving into knowing the oneness of God. It's time to declare God as one. It's time to leave your partialness. It's time to leave the specific vantage point. It's time to leave your piecemeal world and rejoin to the experience of the all. The sun's come up. Bnei Brak is now Beit Shemesh. Right? The sun has come up. There's like one unity. This is not the time now. Right now, we're done with that. That's only night. It's a nighttime activity. Now it's time for the daytime. Okay? You get this? Now it's a whole different thing. And this is it. This is like a life being described here of the type of chirut which enables you to be fully present to the partialness and to not only to accept it, to embrace it, to love it in its preciousness, and to know that that partialness will pass into the big vision. And then that big vision will disappear again, and it'll be back to right here now. As the lightning flashes, and it's the nighttime again. And then the morning comes. And this is it. It's like if you can't hold that interaction, or if you make a claim like that stuff, forget the partialness, just be in the big light, just melt into the big light. Let go, have that bliss, all in favor of it, but not only. And come back, here we are in our body, in this specific life, in this particular moment, living it to its fullest, choosing and having that power of those precious moments. And so that's the Heseva, that's this meaning which they're doing there in Bnei Brak, which is how we start telling the story. Well, not exactly. We started by giving the facts. God took us out of Egypt with a strong hand and answer. Great. Leaving Egypt, number one. Then there's leaving Egypt, number two, which is the one we're actually really telling the story of. It's a circuitous route. God is here with us. He's taken us back there so we can leave again and know that now it's a story of love. It's a story of a common and joint and compassionate creation together of a quest and a search. right? And yeah, so that gives you a little bit of a taste of then why Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, well, we'll get there next time. What happens? Yeah, let's stop here and take questions or participations. Yeah.
Are you gonna get to why the rabbis discuss like the every year, like?
Yeah. That's the next step though. What I would just point out now is that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, I get it. So Pesach night, where we're experiencing this partialness, and we're not telling a story of an event that happened in history, that's nighttime work. During the year, we're remembering not the way we do this remembering on Passover night, but rather we're remembering the historical event when God took us out of Egypt. He redeemed us, right? And we actually do it as a preparation for prayer, right? In the order of the prayers in the morning, we talk about God took us out of Egypt, Ga'al Yisrael, He redeemed us. And yeah, and now I'm going to pray that you redeem us again and again, right? But that's the historical memory. So he says, it's clear to all of us that during the year, what we're doing every day is that kind of remembering that Hashem took us out of Egypt, but not seeing it as if it's happening to us now. But is there also the nighttime memory? I didn't find that there was the nighttime memory until Ben Zoma came and explained that it's actually hidden in the verse. Even during the year, there's the nighttime memory, right? Okay, so that's what's going on there. And then the rabbis say, what about the times of the Mashiach? I think we're going to be doing that then too. So this is too much for us to do now at the tail end of the class, but I'm just sort of pointing into the direction. Okay. Anything? Yeah, go ahead.
I was sort of thinking, I think you said something like a while ago about like the Kohn then.
Yes.
And how like I was just thinking how there's maybe like the whole matzahs, which are almost like the day. It's just like.
Yes, you are
like
absolutely right.
And then like sandwich in between is the night with like the broken pieces.
I totally identify with that. I did point that out then, but now I think you can see it much more fully, right, as we unpack that. Yeah, if you remember what again your name? Mira's reminding us of is remember when we broke the matzah and put most of it away and talked about how knowing that your story is only part of the story is a very, very liberating realization. Exactly. So we're kind of unpacking that even more here. Correct. Okay. Yeah, pleasure talking to you. It really is. Really is. Yeah, pleasure. See you next week. And so